Right. Welcome to Kent State University Cartwright Hall. We have the internet and we have very little time, so I'm going to speak very, very briefly. There's a wonderful bio for our special guest online. Please check it out. But you have someone before you who has been nominated for 7 Grammy Awards, has played with a laundry list of legends, including Tito Puente and, yes, Dizzy Gillespie. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome to the stage Bobby Sanabria.
Thank you, sir. Thanks, Mark. Hi, everybody. Perfect. Thank you all for being here. My name is Nick Petrella. I'm the event chairperson for Art Without Limits. This is going to be an interview-style presentation where I'm going to pick Bobby's brain for music business anecdotes that he can tell in public. And at the end, we're going to save about 10 minutes and we'll walk around with Mike so you can ask him questions. Okay, so first interview question. This talk is about arts entrepreneurship and the music business. So let's begin by having you tell us what your first big break was after you graduated from Berklee.
Well, I went to the Berklee College of Music, which is the leading institution for jazz education in the world. I graduated there in 1979. I was a freshman in 75. So that was, I'm an OG. I'm original in terms of the music. And my degree is, I have a bachelor's of music degree in what at that time was the hardest degree to get at the school, which I didn't know at the time. People thought I was crazy. My degree was applied music. You had to take 8 semesters of jazz and 8 semesters of classical percussion. And my minor was arranging and composition. So my break came right after college. I'm a New Yorker. I'm from the Bronx, the South Bronx in New York City. So I would go back and forth. The summer would come, I'd come back to New York City. The fall would come, you know, fall break, come back to New York City. So I got back to New York City, and when I would come back on the summers and falls, I would do some occasional gigs, but a lot of people wouldn't hire me because, oh, you're gonna go back to school, Bobby. We can't, you know, we need somebody that's gonna stay in this band or whatever. But when I came back, everybody knew that I was back, and so I started getting calls for gigs. But my first major gig when I got back was I got a call from Mongo Santamaria's manager. I don't know if you know who Mongo Santamaria is, but Mongo Santamaria is a very famous, legendary figure in Afro-Cuban Latin jazz. He's a conga player. He was the most visible exponent of that instrument in the 60s and 70s, and in the 50s as well. So to get that gig in his small band was a coup, because the gig required that I played authentic drum set and authentic timbales in the Cuban style. And there were very few guys that could do that. You could count them on 3 fingers at that time. It was me, Steve Berrios, and you know, that was it. So when I came back, people had heard, so I got the call, and he goes, Jack Hook, I always remember, is this Bobby Sanabria? And I go, yeah, this is Jack Hook. And I knew who he was. He was Mongo's manager. And he had been one of the part owners of the famous legendary jazz club, Birdland, on West 52nd Street. So he had bona fides as a very famous person in the world of jazz from the behind the scenes. He was also Alan Freed's accountant, the guy that started using the term rock and roll, okay? So he goes, listen, we're leaving for Europe in a couple of days. You got a passport, right? I didn't have a passport. And I said, no, but I can go get one. And he goes, well, I don't know. So I went, at that time you could go to the passport office and get your passport in 1 day if you proved that it was an emergency. So I got the passport, I call him back, and he goes, that's too bad, kid. You know, Mongo didn't want to take a chance and this, that. So I lost that gig. 6 months, and I was devastated. Because
how
that was
old-
my dream gig, you know, like,
How old were you?
I was 21.
21.
And I was married, too, at the time. Talk about how crazy, I was married at 21. So, but 6 months later, I got called again. And that was my first big gig. And the first gig, we did a week at a club called Fat Tuesdays, which was run by Stan Getz's son, Steve Getz. Stan Getz, the very famous tenor saxophone player. And then we did a recording session for an album, and then we went to Europe for 4 weeks. So that was my first big break. And the great thing about that was, got to play all the major festivals, and when they see you playing, you got all these great legendary jazz figures checking you out.
Yeah, it's your business card.
Yep. And one thing I must say to you as entrepreneurs, business people, etc., you're always auditioning. I'm auditioning for you right now. You don't know me. You know, who is this guy? I read about his book. And it's 9 times, not 7, 9 Grammys. I've been nominated for, as a leader, not as a sideman. As a side person, I've been nominated on many Grammy-nominated albums as well, but as a leader, 9 times.
Yeah.
So
you touched on a little bit about what musicians should do, and we have a lot of musicians in the audience. And I'd say a good amount of them want to play professionally. What advice would you give them as they begin their careers?
the great thing about being a musician is you never stop learning. You never stop learning. First of all, you have to, if you're an instrumentalist, you have to do what we call maintenance, which means you're always practicing, you're always maintaining a certain level on the instrument that you play. If you're a drummer, percussionist, you're playing all these different instruments. If you're a saxophone player, you have maybe the one main instrument that you play, say you're an alto player. But if you play alto, you should be able to play baritone saxophone at an emergency. You should be able to play some clarinet and some flute. Because if you don't, you're not going to be able to sub on Broadway. If you play some clarinet, that means you could play some soprano saxophone as well. So if you're a pianist, you know you're maintaining your chops. These are just given things that everybody knows. The one thing I must say, though, don't get into this obsessive thing, oh, I have to practice 10 hours a day or 8 hours a day. There's more to life. And as a musician, you are influenced by your life experiences. So if you don't know what it is to see a beautiful sunset on a beach, that's not going to influence you as a composer, as a player. If you do see a beautiful sunset on the beach or whatever, and you go into a gig that night, and you're playing on a blues, and you're a tenor player or bass player, and you take a solo, and all of a sudden, at the end of the night, one of the cats in the band might go to, yo, man, that solo you took was very moving, man. It was like, what? I don't know, man. I was at the beach today, you know, and I saw this sunset, and, you know, just got me in a vibe, okay? So make time for the other things in life. Family, friends, okay? Food, good food. Having a meal of something, of some meal from, of a different, that represents a different culture might influence you, okay? You know, I've said this many times. Hot dogs, pizza, and hamburgers are cool. They're comfort food. They're comfort food. They're just, you know, donuts, coffee, you know. But if that's all you eat, you're just gonna get fat and fart a lot. So make sure you check out other types of food. And when you check out other types of food, you're gonna check out other cultures as well. That's the great thing about me growing up in New York City. We have all these cultures all around us. It could be as simple as you walking into a bodega. Everybody knows what a bodega is. It's a corner store in the Hispanic community. Bodega means wine cellar originally, but in Puerto Rico, it became known as a place to buy groceries. And you walk in, and there's a person who's of Yemen culture behind the counter. And you know, you start talking with them, maybe. The bodega in New York is where everybody comes together. And you ask them a simple question, hey, how do you say hello in your language? And that might influence you into, it shows that you have some kind of heart, some sensitivity, some soul.
Yeah.
Yeah?
So be interested, ask questions, right?
Ask questions, enjoy life, that all life has to offer. Of course, if you're a musician, your soul is transmitted through the instrument, but your soul is your whole life experience.
Yeah. Now, you're the leader of a very successful band, right? Multiverse.
Several bands.
Well, we're going to talk about this. So let's tell us about your bands, how you form them, and what you look for in musicians when you're hiring, whether it's a gig or a permanent spot.
When I look for musicians, I look for the most versatile musicians that I can possibly find. The technical aspect is a given. They have to be able to sight read at will, but they have to be able to function in different styles of music. I'm known for playing jazz. Jazz is a big tent, man. It's a big, huge house with a lot of rooms, okay? And the conscientious musician will visit those rooms on occasion, okay? So in one room might be Tower of Power, which is the greatest funk band that has ever existed, but all of the horn lines that they do and the harmonies that they do come from jazz and R&B and funk. So you have to be able to deal with that. Another room is Tito Puente, the greatest Latin band leader that has ever existed, the greatest percussionist, the greatest composer, arranger. You have to be able to deal with that music and be able to sight read the syncopations that are found in that music. Another room might be Venezuelan joropo, which is a rhythm of a style from Venezuela that also exists in Colombia because there's a valley connecting both countries. And you can notate the music in 3/4, but it's really a combination of 3/4 and 6/8 time. So if you a Venezuelan or Colombian person, you count out 3/4 time. They're not going to clap like this. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2. That's the way a European person would clap. A Venezuelan or Colombian person is going to clap like this. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, like that. And then against that, you got 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, and 1, 2, 3, and 1, 2, 3, and 1. So somebody, coming into the room, they listen to this. 1, 2, 3, and they think, oh, that's 1, 2, what? No, no. That's 2 and the end of 3. 1, 2, 3, and 1, 2, 3, and. So you have to deal with things like that. Yeah. And of course, they have to know jazz, harmony, be great jazz improvisers. That means harmony. And in terms of Cuban music, clave, Dominican music, Puerto Rican music, that's what I look for, versatile musicians and open-minded musicians too, because sometimes we do things that could be considered avant-garde. Like I had the students the other day on a piece we're gonna play. I told all the horn players, take out the mouthpieces and improvise just on the mouthpiece. So the average, some of them, obviously were laughing because they've never done that before, but, it was interesting to see how they reacted and what they started playing over a groove,
All right, so that's what you're looking for, versatile. They got to be great at what they do.
And obviously professional, be on time.
Yeah, well, that's what I was going to get.
Yeah.
Say the gig starts at 8 o'clock. What are your expectations?
I expect you to be there early enough so that we can go over what we're going to play, and not me as the leader going crazy, going, where is this person? Where is this person? And if you're going to be late or you're going to show up just before the downbeat, at least be professional and let the person know, hey, listen, I'm stuck in traffic. It's not my fault, but I'm going to be there. So that means you leave extra early so in case something like that happens, you get stuck in traffic. Be professional. If I ask you to dress in a black tux with a white shirt and a white tie, I don't expect you coming to the gig going, man, I don't got a white tie. Or if I call you for the gig and I tell you what to wear and you tell me I don't got a white tie, the first thing out of my mouth is gonna be, You know something, man? I think I'm called the wrong person, and I'll just hang up on you. That's not my problem. Get a white tie, man. You know? And if you don't have, I'm pretty flexible. You know, like we had a big concert this past weekend at Princeton University where we did West Side Story Reimagined, which is my take on West Side Story. I transformed it all with Afro-Latin rhythms. I told the guys just what I just said now. I said, listen, if you don't have a black tux, just wear a black suit, you know, because it'll look like a tux anyway. And I tell them, make sure you have a handkerchief, a white handkerchief in there. Now, somebody might think I'm anal, but when you look at the orchestra from your perspective on the stage, and they walk out, what's going to happen is it's like what happened on Princeton University. As soon as they started walking out, the audience went into a thunderous applause. And somebody yelled out, man, you guys look clean, you know?
Yeah, yeah.
So remember, they see you before they hear you. They see you before they hear you. If you're in a rehearsal, let's say you're in a recording session, especially the percussionists for a movie soundtrack, and you're like 5 of you there. One guy's on timpani, the girl's on the mallets, another person's on drum set, another person's handling the auxiliary percussion, another person's handling things like special effects. You're close together. If you haven't taken a shower, man, you know, you're gonna, and you know, like we were talking about this the other day. He was on a thing, they didn't want to tell the person.
He wasn't speaking with me about it,
yeah.
so to be clear, okay.
So instead of telling the person on the next session, they left a bar of soap on his music stand. Yeah.
So let's talk about bands. So you have a few successful bands. Where did the idea come from, and how did they get started?
Well, the first band that I formed was in high school, a band that I call Ascension, and that was this whole concept that I had of a band that could play authentic Latin rhythms, but with jazz. And that was inspired by groups like Mongo Santamaria, but also heroes like Carlos Santana, and others in heroes like Tito Puente. It's a small group. It's 3 horns, usually 4 horns. And it started off smaller than that, just 1 horn. And I kept that up. And we did gigs when I was in high school, believe it or not, around the city. And the concept was always to be able to play music for an audience like you sitting down, a concert, but also be able to play instantaneously at a moment's notice, dance music, if required. And then it's morphed into things like I have a quartet called Quarteto Ache, which is myself on drums, piano, bass, and a person on tenor that plays soprano and flute. And then I have a sextet, 2 horns, and a percussionist. These horns are trumpet and tenor, or trumpet and alto. And then I have the monstrosity that I call the Multiverse Big Band, which is 21 musicians. And when we have vocalists, we have 3 vocalists, so there's 24 people on stage. And the last album we did, every album we've done with that band has been nominated for a Grammy, every album. So I would suggest, right, if you want to get any of the albums, get the last one, VOX HUMANA, which was recorded live at Dizzy's Club called in New York City, and it features 3 female vocalists. Janice Siegel from the Manhattan Transfer, Jennifer J. Ledesma, who was a former student of mine 25 years ago at the New School, and she's amazing. She sings in 11 languages and speaks 5 fluently. And she's half Puerto Rican, half Dominican. She's from the Bronx like me. And when she was a senior at the New School University in the jazz program, she had gone to the legendary LaGuardia School, High School for the Performing Arts, which used to be called Music and Art High School. They teach all the arts there, but music. At one time, the New York Philharmonic, 70% of the New York Philharmonic was made up at one time of people that had gone to that high school. In any case, she goes to me, hey, Prof, I'm graduating, what should I do? And I go, are you in a relationship right now? And she goes, are you asking me out? I go, no, I mean, are you in a relationship? Because that determines, because if you're in a relationship, what I'm going to tell you might affect it. I said, well, what's your advice? I go, didn't you tell me you know some people in Paris? I said, yeah. I said, get the F out of here, go to Paris. Experience life in Europe. You speak French already, so, you know, go there. I go, do you know anybody in Brazil? You love Brazilian music? Yeah, I have some friends in Bahia, northeastern Brazil. Go to Brazil. 10 years later, I get a phone call. He goes, Monsieur Sanabria? You know, I go, who's this? He goes, it's Jen. I'm calling you from Paris. I took your advice. I've been living in Paris for the last 10 years, and I have a steady gig at a nightclub, this, that, and the other. And I also, part of the year, I go to Bahia and stay there. So she speaks fluent Brazilian Portuguese. So the thing I told you about before, experience other things, other types of food, cultures, et cetera, et cetera. And because of that, she's an actress too, because she studied acting when she was in LaGuardia High School for the Performing Arts. So she was recently subbing on Broadway on several shows, and she's a dancer too. She's ridiculous. So be as versatile as you can, be adventurous, and be open to other cultures. Be very, very curious. Be very curious. It's going to enrich your lives as not only human beings, but as musicians. It's going to affect you, the way you play, the way you compose, the way you arrange, and the way you act to your fellow human being.
Yeah, it's good advice. This next question is about networking. But first, I want to set it up with a movie clip. So if we could play that movie real quick.
Uno, dos, tres.
Yeah.
How did you get that gig?
That's the, you know the TV show, The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel? That's a behind the scenes look at it. 1993, I got called to be on to play on the soundtrack for the Mambo Kings, Sing Songs of Love. That was the first movie Antonio Banderas appeared in, American movie. So it was based on the Pulitzer Prize winning book by Oscar Hijuelos, The Mambo King Sings Songs of Love. So while I'm there, you know, there's producers, there's this, that, and the other. It was an elite group of musicians from New York City, the cream of the crop of the musicians that play jazz and Latin music. In fact, on one of the sessions, the most famous bass player in the history of jazz, Ron Carter, he's in the booth next to me. Because Mel Rondon was the contractor, and Mel Rondon had a thing about him that on every movie soundtrack or Broadway studio day or whatever, he would always get Ron Carter to play on at least one song. And Ron was not the bass player, it was Guillermo Echo, but they got Ron to play on this one song, Beautiful Maria of My Soul. So I'm going, I had the timbales, I'm setting, and I go, oh my God, it's Ron Carter. And I go, Mr. Carter, how are you? And he just had the bass like this, he goes like this. Like a king. So the conga player, Papo Pepin, very incredible player, you know, legendary, he goes to me in Spanish, ¿Quién es ese tipo? Who's that dude? And I go in Spanish, I tell him, ese es Ron Carter, man, el bajista más famoso de jazz. And he goes, that's Ron Carter, the most famous bass player in the history of jazz. And in Spanish, he goes to me, this ain't no jazz date. What is he doing here, man? You know, like, just like real New York in your face. And I started laughing and everything. But that's some of the funny anecdotes that I've experienced in my life. But the Mambo Kings, the soundtrack, you should get it. It's really amazing. And then Robert Kraft was the main producer on that. But he had assistant producers. And like 25 years later, you know, I get a phone call is this Bobby Sanabria? He goes, yeah. Yeah, I don't know if you remember me, but I was one of the assistant producers on the Mambo Kings, and I was really impressed with your work ethic and this, that, and the other, and I know you are a well-known band leader and, you know, this, that, and the other. We're doing an episode of The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel, and we're shooting a scene recreating the Copacabana 1958, and you know, could you be the band leader on screen? And so I started going, yeah, you know, and then I started in my head thinking, who is this person? Who is this person? Who is this woman? And then finally it clicked, oh, I remember you, yeah. So I said, yeah, I'd love to do it. And he goes, well, we need musicians. I says, well, we could use my Multiverse Big Band. So I'm trying to get the gig for my musicians too. Well, we could only use like 10 of the musicians. Can't you use more? And so finally I got them up to like 13 musicians. And we had to go to the Astoria Kaufman Studios, get fitted. They told me I had to shave it off. I told them, man, musicians wore goatees and mustaches back then. Yeah, jazz musicians, but this is the orchestra of the Copacabana. No beards, no facial hair, no nothing. I go, all right, whatever. So I learned a lot about fitting, because I remember when they were fitting me, I was standing up on this pedestal, and this woman, very cute older woman, had her hair in a bonnet. She had pins all over and this, that. She's looking at my pants, and she's going like, putting the hem. I go, no, I like the hem a little bit low. And she goes, no, look at this, kid. She called me kid. And it was a chart with all of the way men's pants would lie in the 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s. And he goes, yeah, but they're not going to see my feet. I'm going to be behind the drum set. He goes, listen, you do your job, and I'll do mine, all right? You know, so that's the way it was. And we filmed it at an old VFW hall in Brooklyn, which they made to recreate it to look like the Copacabana circa 1958. The music stands, those were the music stands that they had back then. Somebody from the technical department called me up. Hey, Mr. Sanabria, I'm from so-and-so, whatever. We want to get a drum set for you. What kind of drum set do you need? I says, well, I need a vintage drum set from the 1940s into the 50s, Slingerland, Gretsch, whatever. Call Maxwell's Vintage Drum Shop in New York City. They'll be able to get it. They say, oh, yeah, we've worked with them before. What about the conga drums? And I go, well, that's a hard one because the only ones available at that time were made by two Cuban drum makers, Vergara and Requena, and you're not going to be able, but is there anyone that can reproduce them? I go, yeah, Matthew Smith. He lives in upstate New York, but he makes them in the way Vergara used to make the drums. Okay, give me his number, you know, and they got the drums, everything, man, this kit, the whole thing, it was amazing. But I got the gig, why? Because that woman remembered me. She dug my work ethic and my professionalism, and she remembered me. She remembered me 20 years later, you know, so you're always auditioning. You're always auditioning. You're always auditioning. You don't know who you're speaking to, like at a party or whatever. And then, you know, 5 years later, hey, I met you at this party, and you told me you played saxophone, and I've been following your career, this, and that. I need you for a movie soundtrack. Can you do that? And that's what happened with this.
Yeah. So that's your biggest advice for networking. You're always auditioning.
Yeah.
Treat it like that.
Yeah, be professional. Be sensitive to people. You know, we have a tradition in New York City of off-color jokes and everything, and this, that, and the other. You got to know who you're speaking to, okay? With your friends, you're going to talk differently than with somebody you don't know. You're just getting to know somebody. First impressions are everything. Sometimes you make a bad impression. If you're lucky, you get a chance to redeem yourself, but most of the time you don't.
So we got about 5 or 10 minutes to cover 3 questions, then we're going to open it up to the audience. But we've known each other for about 25 years, and I just learned at lunch the other day that you're a member of the Screen Actors Guild. How did that happen?
The Screen Actors Guild, yeah, I'm a card-carrying member of I get to vote for the Oscars and all that. Well, when you do jobs in New York City, for example, voiceovers or appear anything with voiceovers, and if they're union, if you do 2 of them, all of a sudden you get a phone call from the Screen Actors Guild. Says, is this Bobby Sanabria? I go, yes. Yeah, this is SAG, the union. You got to join the union. And I go, yeah, but I'm not an actor. And I go, you are now. You got to join. Because I had done a couple of voiceovers on commercials. Because I'm there recording, and because I know Spanish, the producer on the jingle date goes, hey, Bobby, can you say something in Spanish here? This is the scene. We're going to put it in as background or whatever. I go, sure, you know. So I got a Burger King commercial. If you blink, you don't see me. I'm playing congas in a factory. But, and the other, there was 3 people. There was a guy named Tony who was on the original cast of Stomp, African-American gentleman, and Chris Bodie was the other person, the trumpet player, the jazz trumpet player, was very well known. He's like a superstar in jazz. And at that time, he was not famous. And Tony and him were on the set of the commercial. It was filmed in Brooklyn. And they're talking about how they got the gig through their agent and managers. They go, so Bobby, who's your agent? I go, yeah, I work for this company called Me, Myself, and I. I just got called for the commercial out of nowhere. They needed somebody to play a percussionist in this scene, play congas. I'm primarily a drummer and timbal player, but I play congas too because I'm a percussionist. So, and I always remember when I went to the audition, it was a phalanx of all my colleagues in the scene. And I was the last one there. So I walked in, I got tired of waiting and waiting and waiting. But I'll wait because, you know, I had no expectation of getting it. I walk in and they had a table full of donuts and coffee. And I just looked at it and I go, this is all you got? With my arrogant New York Bronx self, I said, this is all you got, donuts and coffee, man? You keep me waiting outside? And they started laughing. And basically, I charmed myself into the commercial because I had the skills to do it, but they needed somebody with that kind of vibe for the commercial. But like I said, if you blink, you don't see me. You see Chris playing a little. Tony was doing his stomp thing in an elevator, you know, like breakdancing in the elevator with 2 sticks. And you see me doing a tumbao on the congas. I had a pork pie hat and everything. But if you blink, it was like a 15-second commercial. Commercials used to be 60 seconds, then because of they're so expensive, they became 30, and now they've become 15. You know, the attention span.
Does being a member of SAG, did that help you negotiate for Marvelous Mrs. Maisel or no?
No, well, it helped me getting paid.
Yeah, okay.
That's about the only thing. Because first of all, they said, you know, like they were talking about the musicians, and I knew I was going to appear on screen. So I said, well, I'm a member. None of the guys in my band were members of SAG. But I said, I'm a member of SAG. Oh, are you? So they had to draw up a different contract, and I got paid more. And because I said what I said, uno, dos, history. History is the most important subject. When I was on the recording session, we did a recreation of Mambo No. 5, which was a big hit for Perez Prado, the Cuban band leader, in the 50s. And he always had a thing, he would count off like that. Or he'd go, uno, dos, you know, whatever, depending on the tune. So I said to the producers, hey, on the click, can I do that? Because that was part of Perez Prado's tradition. And they said, oh yeah, that's a great idea. So I did it. When I got to the studio, not the studio, to the VFW hall, they brought us in a bus. We had a meet at Astoria Kaufman Studios. They dressed us. They had breakfast for us, catered breakfast, the incredible catered breakfast for us. And they had people with bottles of whatever, some chemical in it, walking around because we had white dinner jackets on, just in case we spilled anything on. Oh. They immediately would clean it. So when I got to the studio, all of a sudden I see this big crane coming toward me, They're rehearsing. I go, what's going on? He goes, it's going to start with you, your face, and you know, the way you counted.
Yeah.
And we had earbuds, and the director was a woman. I forgot her name. The assistant director was a woman. The entire crew was multiracial and multi-generational, which I loved. And the woman goes to us, she yelled at us. She goes, musicians, play exactly the way you played on the recording. Bob, you know, she don't mind it. Play the exact same fills, everything. You know, we're not going to do any fakery here or anything like that. Because when you, as musicians, you see in movies, sometimes you start laughing, you know, like in the Clint Eastwood movie on Charlie Parker called Bird. There's a scene where they have a close-up of the drummer and playing Max Roach, and the drummer's going on the hi-hat, and in the movie you see him playing the cymbal. And you're going like, oh my God, you know. That whole thing about, nah, nobody's gonna notice. The greatest attribute of great art is what? Subtlety and nuance. People care. We care as musicians. Yeah. So she cared, and we applauded her when she said that. And the musicians did that. If you notice, if you go back and look at it in slow motion, all the fingerings, all the things are correct. Yeah. The fills are correct. And because my historical knowledge, I got a face shot there.
Yeah. And it filled up the whole screen. You can't see it on here, but go check it out. So I got two more questions.
Sure.
You had a fascinating career with a variety of income streams. So let's talk about the Bronx Music Hall and how working in a nonprofit is or isn't different from being a working musician.
Well, I'm myself and my lady Elena Martinez. We are the co-artistic directors of the Bronx Music Hall / Bronx Music Heritage Center. It's the artistic arm of the nonprofit organization called WETCO, Women's Housing and Economic Development Corporation, that was founded about 30 years ago by Nancy Bieberman, a legendary housing lawyer in the Bronx. Her cases are studied in law classes on the college level. If you want to see what Nancy looks like, she's featured as a talking head in the Ken Burns documentary series on Vietnam, because she was a student at Columbia University, and much like your ancestors here at Kent State protested the Vietnam War, the students at Columbia University protested the Vietnam War, and they protested that Columbia had invested money in diamond mines in South Africa, et cetera. So the students told the upper echelon of the school, this is wrong, what you're doing, this, that. They didn't listen, so what did the students do? They took over the school. They tied up the president. You can look it up in Wikipedia. It was an amazing week in New York City, you know. And Nancy was one of those people. So that's why she's in the Ken Burns documentary. So when she was a lawyer in the South Bronx, she realized that women, especially single women, were being taken advantage of by the court system in terms of especially housing. So at the time, we had a lot of burned out buildings in New York because of the fires in the South Bronx, and the city was selling a lot of them for $1 to anyone that would be willing to renovate them, using sweat equity and getting their own money and applying for grants and everything. So she formed this organization with like-minded individuals. She knew some people that were rich too, and she bought the old Morrisania Hospital in the South Bronx, a massive building, for $1. I remember it well because my parents used to take me there when I was sick. And she renovated it into beautiful, affordable apartments. But when she was at Columbia University, she had met Dr. Mark Nason, who teaches African American Studies at Fordham University. And Mark and her became friends. And Mark was from Brooklyn, and he was radicalized, you know, which means socially conscious to be. And he told her at that time, you know, these neighborhoods that are being burnt, and people look at the people like they're, you know, they're doing it themselves and they look down upon them, but these are working class people that represent a culture, they speak in different languages, they should be respected, and they have great music, great art, etc., literature, theater, dance, food. And Nancy remembered that, and so next to the Morrisania Hospital, she built a junior high school. with an arts, theater, and music program. Then she built from scratch another building on a vacant lot with 180 apartments on, well, it was Freeman Street, which is now Lewis Knight Boulevard. And on that on the bottom floor was a small space that could best be described as an art gallery space. And she got me and Elena, and she goes to, we were on the advisory board of the Bronx Music Heritage Center, us and some well-known Bronxites. And I don't know if you know, but the Bronx at one time had as many or more nightclubs and catering halls and dance halls than Manhattan. All that disappeared with the fires. So she goes to me, what would you do if you were the head of a performing arts organization and you had a building or a space? I started thinking, I said, well, I'd do what Wynton Marsalis has done at Jazz and Lincoln Center, but what I would do is make it available and feature Bronx-based artists and all of the cultures of the Bronx that are there, which are numerous. She goes, that's exactly what I wanted to hear. You guys, I want you to, in this small art gallery space, do what you want with it. So we had a stage, full sound, drums. We started teaching piano classes there because you could get these cheap, like Casio-like pianos on stands. So we taught beginning piano classes there, taught conga classes, taught salsa mambo dance classes. We taught capoeira, Brazilian martial art dance form there, guitar classes. We did film screenings. We did hundreds of concerts, man, ridiculous. We had panel discussions. I remember the time we had the panel discussion on Stop and Frisk. That place was jammed. Could only hold, at the most, 50 people. There was about 100 inside and a line outside. Oh, wow. And so we made our bones there over 10 years. And Nancy had told us the goal is, we got another lot, the last lot available in the South Bronx huge lot. I'm gonna build a massive building there with 305 apartments. And on the bottom, there's gonna be a theater. And you guys are gonna be the directors of it, but you make get your chops here. So we were supposed to open 3 years ago, but because of COVID, we opened up last year. It's a 250-seat multi-use theater. There's an amphitheater in the back. There's a stage out front. We have a fully equipped dance studio with a sprung floor. Our lobby is so huge, we even have concerts in the lobby. And it's been an amazing journey. And never in my wildest dreams that I would ever think that I would be the head of a small performing arts center, having grown up in the South Bronx on East 153rd Street, and this place is 10 blocks away from where I grew up. I grew up in the Melrose Projects, and this is 10 blocks away from where I grew up. So it's been a great journey, and and why did Nancy pick me? She had been a fan of mine. Little did I know, she had been following me for years, going to my concerts, seeing me playing as a side person with other famous groups, and that's what I'm telling you. You're always auditioning, man.
So last question is, if you're not busy enough, you have a successful radio show on WBGO called Latin Jazz Cruise.
Right.
How did you create that opportunity, and how has that helped further your career?
Same thing. Always auditioning. People were watching me. Little did I know they were checking me out, as we say in the Bronx. WBGO is the world's largest jazz station. You can hear it by going to WBGO.org. If you're in the New York area, you go to FM, WBGO 88.3 FM. There's the WBGO app. They had started in 1979. We used to have a 24-hour jazz station in New York City, WRVR. And that was around the time that that movie Urban Cowboy had come out with John Travolta. And at the time, the FCC, who governs radio and TV, and you know about all of this with Jimmy Kimmel, at the time, you could only have 3 radio stations because they were against monopolies. But then what happened, Ronald Reagan deregulated the FCC, and finally Bill Clinton completely deregulated it. And now you could buy as many stations as you wanted. So Viacom and Clear Channel bought over 1,000 radio stations across the country. Many of them were black-owned R&B, jazz, and public radio stations. And that, to make their money back, what did they start doing? What's the cheapest way to get your money back? Talk radio, sports radio. This was the rise of these pundits on the radio and everything else. WRVR got bought by Viacom. And what did they do? Because of Urban Cowboy, that movie, and that was happening at the they made it into a country western station. I remember I was taking a shower, and I'm listening to Goodbye Pork Pie Hat by Charles Mingus, and all of a sudden I hear Merle Haggard come on. And I go, what the hell happened? Something must have happened on the receiver. I call up the radio station, it's Then in the news, it came on at night. So WBGO was formed in Newark, New Jersey to take, a vacuum always has to be filled in business. You're gonna learn that as entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
So that's what happened. The show was originally, my show was originally started by a gentleman by the name of Irv Roberts, who was African-American, who was a great piano player, but he changed his name to Chico Mendoza so he could do salsa gigs. And he started the show. It was on at like 3 in the morning till like 5 in the morning, 6 in the morning. Then Alfredo Cruz took it over for a few years. Then Awilda Rivera took it over for 23 years, and she retired. And they were looking for somebody to replace her. And they tried people. And I was doing a concert for WBGO, a lunchtime concert in Newark, for their lunchtime series. And Amy Niles, who was the then head of the station, who was an ex-Broadway actress, singer, dancer. She was the sub for, what's her name? Patti LuPone on Broadway for Evita. She had retired from that, and she was the general manager of the station. And she comes up to me in the middle of, at the end of the concert. She goes, listen, we're looking for somebody to replace Awilda. We've tried a few people, they suck. And I go, I see the way you speak on the concert. I think you would be the perfect choice to do the radio show. And I said, man, Amy, thanks so much, but let me think about it because I'm really busy. I'll call you back on Monday. This was on a Friday. I called her back. She didn't call me back. 2 weeks passed by. I said, I guess they got some. Yeah. She calls me back, and she goes, how much do you want to do the show? And I told her what I wanted, and I told her I need to be able to tape the show because, on occasion, because I travel, and I'm a busy working musician. And the other thing is, too, that you have to let me pick the music, and I can't have any interference about that. And you have to let me educate the audience about the music.
Perfect.
And she said, that's exactly why I asked you to do it. So I've been there for the last 5, 6 years. It's been great. Go to WBGO Latin Jazz Cruise. There's the archive is there. You can listen to last week's show and the last year of shows. I'm on from 4 to 6. WBGO.org. You can listen anywhere in the world. You don't have to listen in real time. You can listen later in the archive, like I just said.
Perfect. So I know time's running short. We got about 2 minutes, and I promised questions. Does anyone have any questions? Okay, bunch of questions. You'll get there before I will, Mark.
Who were some of your early musical teachers?
My father. He had an eclectic taste in music. He was a machinist. It took him 2 hours to get to work in the morning in Long Island from the South Bronx, 2 hours to get back. So his ritual was sit in a lazy boy chair, smoke a cigarette, Salem cigarettes I remember, and drink the worst beer in the world, Schaefer beer, and listen to music, and I would listen to what he would listen to, everything from Harry Belafonte to folk, to stars from Mexico like Jose Antonio Aguilar, jazz people like Ahmad Jamal, Count Basie, and of course, people like Tito Puente, Machito, etc. And Brazilian music like Sergio Mendes, Bob Dylan. I mean, I remember when he bought the 45 for Sex Machine by James Brown. I said, Pop, you like this? He goes, yeah, you don't like it? It's not funky enough for you? So that, my father, he's the greatest teacher I ever had.
That's great. We got time for one more question, and then if you wouldn't mind, Bobby, we'll have you out back if anybody has any other questions, we can chat out there.
Sure.
You said you mentioned Patti LuPone. Have you ever done for Broadway musicals? If so, what have been your favorites?
I've done some off-Broadway work, which is much more fun than Broadway. I haven't subbed on Broadway because I've been just too busy. But I remember, I'll tell you a funny story. I'm part of the group of elite musicians that did studio work in New York City on a daily basis. And I remember the first studio session I did, it was John Faddis and a bunch of other musicians. And Lou Soloff, the great lead trumpet player, goes to me, "Hey, Bobby, great job, fantastic. Let me just give you a piece of advice. Don't do club dates. Those are like wedding gigs and corporate gigs. And don't do Broadway." I go, "Why?" "It'll kill your freaking soul, man." And I go, "Wow, man. Listen, we'll talk about it later, more in depth, but I gotta go." And I go, "Well, where you gotta go to?" I go, "I gotta go to do a club date. I'll see you later," you know? Because if you're a jazz improviser like me, Broadway is lucrative because you get steady pay, you get benefits, this, that, and the other. But it's mind-numbing because you're doing the same thing every night, and you gotta, the conductor, you know, some of these conductors, a friend of mine, one of the guys in my band, Jeff Lederer, subbed on In the Heights, and he's a virtuoso clarinet player, and he did there was a little obligato, and he just put a little twirl at the very end to make it sound hipper. The conductor said to the contractor, "Don't hire him again. They want you to play exactly the way it is." And if you're a creative guy like me, I can do it, I've done it. Off-Broadway is hipper, because you do experimental theater, you get to experiment a lot. But I love seeing my colleagues in the pit and everything. And I've been approached to sub on Broadway, but I've never been able to do it because I've been busy.
Well, thank you so much for being here. It was great to hear you share your experience. Let's give Bobby a big round of applause.
Thank you. Thank you. And if you want to get in touch with me on Facebook, you could private message me, or you could go, my website is bobbysanabria.com, and you could email me, copy this down if you want, if you have any questions. N as in Nancy, UJACKRICAN@yahoo.com. That's newjackrican@yahoo.com.
Thank you so much. And as you're walking out, I did have a student who took him up on that, and she had a lesson with Janis Siegel.
Yeah. And if you want, I'm in the lobby. Come in, I'll talk to you. Okay. And come to the concert on Thursday.